We're in the middle of a gavaldige sugya, mamish a gavaldige sugya. The heilige sugya of Kiddush. Kiddush, no, the truth is, the Maisa, the Oilim were hacking. Who were the Oilim were handling yesterday? Kois pogum azoi, nazoi, my tati does azoi, my tati does azoi. So the truth is, maybe, Beli Neda, we will discuss this in more detail, because we really didn't go through it properly yesterday. We probably just like swept it under the carpet, and everyone was like, whoa, hold on a minute. So maybe Beli Neda will spend a day specifically talking about Kois Pogum, what does it mean, how to get out of Kois Pogum, and how to make sure we don't have problems with Kois Pogum. Moti, don't worry, we will get there. But we're in the middle of the sugya whiskey. The Olim are handling whether or not we can make Kiddush on schnapps and whiskey.
No whiskey.
Who said that? Let's go. So Rabbi say, we're in the middle of the kasha like this. Our kasha mati yesterday was about making kiddush with grape juice. That's the shaila. And the shaila basically came like this. The shaila was that, of course, lechatchila, to make kiddush al yayin is the most lechatchila, as I state in the Gemara, as I paskin shulchan aruch, yayin yoshon, yishmaka, old, aged wine. That is really what kiddush is meant to be made on. However, there are many people that don't like wine. There are many people that cannot take wine for whatever reason, and they want to go along and make kiddush on grape juice. And the shaila is, what din does grape juice have? So we said yesterday at the end that the Gemara says clearly, Soichet Odom Eshkol Shelanovim. The Gemara says clearly that a person can take a cluster of grapes and he can squeeze it, and boom, he can make kiddush. So if that's the case, that's grape juice. If that's the case, we can make kiddush on grape juice lechatchila, because the Gemara says so. The question that we left off with yesterday was as follows. The problem with our grape juices, and many of them, are that they are pasteurized, which means if we have grape juice that are quote unquote cooked, a cooked grape juice can never become wine. One of the many reasons that the Rishonim bring why grape juice works, even though it hasn't got the chashivas and the alcoholic beverage content of grape juice, but at the end of wine, but at the end the reason why it's allowed to be used is because it could eventually become, has the koyach, it has, should we say these words, potential to become wine. And since it has the potential to become wine, so therefore it's got a din right now of wine, even though lemaisa it's not. That was question number one. Question number two, which we didn't even mention, by the way, Shlomo Zalman brings this in Shuvas and Mincha Shleima, and that is that many times when they make grape juice, they actually extract the water content from the liquid, and they keep it stored that way, and when they want to reconstitute it, they will now, quote unquote, dilute it, which is not really diluting it, they put it back to its original state of grape juice with the amount of water that it had. And the question is again, how can you do that? This is regular water that you're putting into concentrated grape juice. Mati, are you with me? And the question is, are you or are you not allowed to do that? How can you make kiddush on grape juice? So Shlomo Zalman is a moedik kiddush. And by the way, I want to be clear right now, we will discuss maybe later, I don't know about today, maybe tomorrow, we'll discuss the idea of diluting wine and grape juice, which by the way is very nageya if you get to the end of the bottle and you're like, oh no, I need kois mole. The Gemara tells us that, the kosher bracha requires 10 things, and one of them is a kois mole. You get to the end of the bottle, you want to squeeze that glass bottle just to push and get a few more drops out, and it's not going to the end of the kois, so what are you meant to do? So I'll just put a bit of water in it, right, Raf? Put a bit of water in it, I'll dilute it. Can't do that, right? Because of diluting grape juice could be a problem that's no longer got a din of grape juice. That we'll talk about Ruvain when we get there. But I'll upon him, until we get there, we have to know, Shlomo Zalman says a moedik chiddush. Yidla, what's the chiddush? Shlomo Zalman says the chiddush is like this. Shlomo Zalman says that since b'shas, when he squeezed the grape juice, right then, it has the koyach, yitz, of becoming wine, even though maybe perhaps later on they pasteurize it, they cook it, and therefore it loses that koyach. Since b'shas, the squeezing it, it's good enough. That's good. That's a chiddush of Shlomo Zalman, by the way. It's an amazing chiddush. It reminds me always that this is probably what reminded you also. I saw that face lit up. Probably reminded you the same thing. Chacham Ben Tzina Bashaul in Olet Zion Chelek Bet in Perek Chov Gimel brings down the reason why he allows bottle caps to be opened, especially even metal ones, is because on the machine itself, when they take the piece of metal and they put it over the actual bottle, so if you would stop the machine in the middle, you'd be able to open it. Now it happens to be they don't stop the machine and it continues to go completely over the bottle and you can no longer open it without snapping the thing, which is a shaila. But I'll upon him, since he says that since they could have, when it's first started, open it, right? You get what I'm saying? That's probably why that reminded you. Anyway, the point is, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says that since when they squeeze the grapes originally, it can turn into wine, akiva, it's got a din of wine, even though Lamaisa they pasteurize it afterwards. Now, that I wasn't so. I mean, that's a great answer. It's a great Kiddush of Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, but I wasn't completely satisfied with that because I wanted to hear a little bit more. Dubi, I wanted to hear a little bit more and understand. So you guys, Baruch Hashem, are sitting in the base medrash. I'm trying to call up grape juice and wine companies to ask them what Lamaisa do they do with this situation. So I actually called up the OU. Right, I called up the OU and asked the OU. I don't know. By the way, this is not a. I don't know anything about the OU and their shitas in different kashrus inyonim. I'm not getting involved. OU in Eretz Yisrael, is it good? Is it not good? I don't know. I have no idea. Ask a local Orthodox rabbi. But I did call up the OU. And I asked the OU, when it comes to the grape juice that they give a hachshir on, how does it work? So they told me that they paskin like Reb Moshe, and Reb Moshe paskins that bishul is 175 Fahrenheit, which means, according to that, the grape juice and the wines that are under OU are not cooked to that temperature. And if that's the case, they're not cooked to that temperature, they don't have a din of bishul. If they don't have a din of bishul, then there's no problem of using those grape juices or wines because they don't have a din of cooked. And therefore, if they're not cooked, they're royal gabe mizbeach, which is another sugya for Hilchos Kiddush, which we're not going to go into. I called up a big expert in wine. And I asked him, how do they pasteurize many of the wines and grape juices that we have? So he told me the way that they do it in most places is they pass it through very warm pipes. They don't actually put it into a pot and bubble it up. That's not how it works. They pass it through very warm pipes, and that sort of takes off the germs and the things that it needs to be done in order to go, past the factory and various hygiene, specifications that it has to, and that's considered to be pasteurized, but it's not actually cooked, which means, according to that, in most cases, and I'm not going down the nefkamina between this and bishul akum, because that's a whole different shaila, but over here it's not considered to be cooked, which means that it is okay. Now, I will tell you that Rav Elyashiv Lemaisa paskind that you should not use cooked or pasteurized grape juice or wine for Kiddush. You should try to use the chatchila, wine and grape juice that was not pasteurized and was not cooked. But according to most poskim, you are okay to use it. Now, Rabbi said, let's move on. Let's move on to the sugya that I really want to get to today, and that is making Kiddush with something other than wine and other than grape juice. That's our sugya today. It's a sugya called Chama Medina Dubi. The Chama Medina means, are we allowed, I'm just telling you, Chama Medina, are we allowed to make Kiddush with anything but wine and but grape juice? Very important sugya. I want to give you the Makoros and where it comes from in the Gemara, and then we'll move on to Halacha L'Maisa and some practical examples. There's a Gemara in Psachim, Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara in Psachim says like this: Ravin made Havdalah on Be. As I state in the Gemara. Comes along Rav Huna, and Rav Huna says, I don't understand, can you make Kiddush on Be? And the Gemara answers, no, you can't make Kiddush and you cannot make Havdalah. Says the Rosh, Psachim Siman Yud Zayin, says the Rosh, that since we don't paskin like him in regards to Havdalah, we also don't paskin like him in regards to Kiddush. So what does this mean? This means as follows. We have over here a machloikis rishonim, whether or not a person can make Kiddush on Chama Medina, namely something that is not yayin or mitzanavim or grape juice. What is the definition of Chama Medina we'll get to, but Al Kaponim not to make Kiddush on wine and grape juice is subject to a machloikis rishonim. Shitas HaRambam, the Rambam holds by Kiddush, not Havdalah, by Kiddush. We are discussing right now Kiddush. Be very clear. Havdalah is a different gather. When it comes to Kiddush, the Rambam holds that you can never, ever use anything but yayin or grape juice for Kiddush. Shitas HaRambam. You can only use wine and only use grape juice. Shitas HaRambam. One second, we'll take questions maybe after we've gone a little bit more into it. Shitas HaRosh. We'll get to that also. Shitas HaRosh is, of course you can make Kiddush on Chama Medina. So we have over here Machlokes the Rosh and the Rambam. Whether Kiddush can be made on Chama Medina Dubi. Okay? That's the Shaila. Comes along the Shulchan Aruch. And you look this up in Siman Reish Ayin Beis Siv Tes. Look this one up yourself. Perhaps we should even read it inside because it's so important. Says the Shulchan Aruch, B'mokoim she'ein yayin motzoi. And those are very important words because we have to define those words, Yaakov Tzvi. B'mokoim she'ein yayin motzoi. In a place where wine is not found. Now we have to explain and try to define what does it mean wine is not found. So Lamaisa the Shulchan Aruch paskins like Shitas HaRosh to be makel and to say that yes, you are allowed to make Kiddush on Chama Medina, whatever Chama Medina means, in a time, in a situation, Rav, where there is no wine found, which we have to understand what that is in that case. And the Shulchan Aruch makes a chiluk, like Rabbi Wittenstein just pointed out, between Friday night Kiddush and Shabbos day Kiddush. What's the chiluk? Which, without going into too many details into how does it work, making Kiddush al pas, Shulchan Aruch says that by night, since it's a machlokes and we're dealing with a doraisa, don't make Kiddush on Chama Medina by Friday night. Make Kiddush on pas. That means, according to Shulchan Aruch, halacha l'maisa, if you're stuck in a place without Kiddush, without wine, what should you do? The answer is, you should make Kiddush Friday night on pas, on bread, on challah. Right? That's what you're doing. Whereas by day, since we're dealing with a Durabanan, then for sure by day, if there's no yayin motzoi, whatever that means, if there's no wine found, then you are allowed to make Kiddush on what we call Chama Medina. So the biggest question that we have to ask ourselves is, so what does it mean that wine is not found? What does it mean? So let me give you some Gedarim. The Rashbam. The Rashbam says there is no wine available in the entire city. That means according to the Rashbam, if you have wine somewhere in the city, then you're not allowed to make Kiddush on anything but wine. You'll have to go and find that wine. As always the psak of the Rashbam. If there's wine in the city somewhere, you have to make Kiddush on it. If not, if there's nothing found in the city, then you have a heta. The Rosh says even better. The Rosh says if you've got wine within a day's journey, then of course you have to find the wine. That's called motzoi. But if it's more than a day's journey, you're not mechuyev to go traveling more than a day. That's called eino motzoi, which means then you'll have a het of Chama Medina. Zev, you with me? Which makes it very practical, right? So we have the Rashbam, that if it's found in the city, you've got no heta. If we've got now the Rosh that says if it's found within 1 day's journey, then you cannot, then it's not called motzoi. And then you've got the Rambam. Now the Rambam is going to be very, very makel over here. The Rambam holds, I don't care about the availability of wine. I don't care how available it is. It's very simple. Says the Rambam, if roiv people drink it, that's called Chama Medina and that's good enough. Now of course, let's be very clear. The Mishnah Berurah, Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Kaf HaChaim, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Marsham, and others all hold that lechatchila, there's no shaila, yayin, grape juice, that's the top, that's the best. Mitzvah min hamufcha lahadrin min mahadrin. I guess if you light eight lights on Hanukkah, on the 8th night of Hanukkah, and you're a mahadrin min a mahadrin Jew, then mistama, the same thing applies over here. Just havada, you should use yayin or grape juice when it comes to Kiddush, even Shabbos day. Obel Maisa, sometimes you haven't got, or you don't want to, or it's hard for you, it's not available. Rabbi Berkowitz Shlita once told me a very interesting Kiddush. He said to me, especially in Eretz Yisrael where you have, living in apartment buildings, if your neighbor's fridge is like your fridge, then that's called motzoi. But if it's not, then it's not called motzoi. Which means if you have a neighbor that you just knock on the door all the time and you borrow stuff and they borrow stuff from you, and if you've got eggs and if you've got milk and if you've got sugar and if you've got this and if you've got that, so that your fridges become intertwined with each other, do me a favor, can I borrow some grape juice, can I borrow some wine? Then avada, you should, that's called motzoi. But if it's difficult for you, or you don't live in an apartment building and you're not so familiar with the neighbors, then that is already not called motzoi and you're not mechuyev to go there. I want to tell the olam a gewaldige shitas hagraz. Right, especially because we've got the Heilige Yutzeit coming up now on Sunday, Be'ezah Hashem. The Heilige Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe, said the most amazing Kiddush, which I think we're going to be using for many, many situations. The Shulchan Aruch Harav says like this, a massive Kiddush. He says, L'choyre Chama Medina means that Rov people drink this. That this is their drink. This is the national drink. This is what people drink. Zog the Shulchan Aruch Harav a moyedike Kiddush. He says, what if people don't drink it all the time? But not because they don't like it, they love it. But because of the chashivas, they only drink it every so often. Or maybe it's expensive, maybe because it's so choshev, because it's so choshev, they only drink it sometimes. Zog the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Now we can be mekel, and that's called Chama Medina. And I'll be allowed to use that. Why? Because it's so choshev, that's why people don't drink it the whole time. Meaning they would, but it's expensive, it's very choshev. Memela, that's why the people don't drink it. Zog the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Heilige Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe, Moedik. That lefi zeh, we have a metzias of a drink that most people don't drink. But they would, it's just very expensive, or forget, because it's choshev, they only serve it in certain situations. So according to that, maybe we can be makel on many things, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, Lemaisa, Rav Moshe in Shuvas brings down that any drink a person serves to choshev guests come in and he serves them, and he would serve them such a drink, that's considered to be Chama Medina. The Chazon Ish was mashma that we don't even have Chama Medina nowadays, that it's not negeir in that case. And according to Rav Scheinberg, he said according to the Mishnah Brura, there's basically no Chama Medina nowadays, but he says that if people are koveya suda on something, then that's considered to be enough of a reason to say it's Chama Medina. So let me give you some examples. Water will never be Chama Medina. Seltzer, right, sparkling water, never be Chama Medina. That means however choshev it is, whatever they sever bechasnas, which they do, that will never be Chama Medina, even if everyone drinks it at all of their chasanas. Water and seltzer, sparkling water will never be Chama Medina. Okay? Milk, according to most poskim, the Birkei Yosef and Chacham Betzin Abashon Olet Zion and others, say that milk is not considered to be Chama Medina. Apple juice and orange juice, there are poskim, and they're not machalik, by the way, between fresh dafka, hold that apple juice and orange juice is something choshev that you would serve to a guest, and therefore there's efshar mokim to say that that's considered to be Chama Medina. Soda and sparkling drink, Coca-Cola, Sprite, and all of these sorts of things over there. So there are those poskim that held that it could possibly, again, b'mokum, that there's no wine, grape juice, whatever, to be used for Chama Medina, Zoi Paskin and Meiser of Scheinberg. But most poskim hold that it's really considered to be flavored water, and flavored water, Ravada, is not considered to be Chama Medina. When it comes to beer is a big shaila. Most poskim nowadays hold, including the Stipler, Rebelski, Rebbe Zil Orbach told me as well, that beer nowadays, maybe it used to be, Rabbi Israel said it used to be that what beer was such a choshev a drink, you would serve it at choshev times to choshev a guest, but now beer is not something that's choshev, so many poskim hold that is not. I think Chacham Betzin shows that it holds that it is still Chama Medina in that case. Coffee and tea, most poskim say that it cannot be used for Chama Medina. The reason that they say, as they paskin Rafalk and Max Eliyahu, Rav Moshe also, is that it's flavored water. Coffee and tea is hot water that's been flavored. If that's the case, to use it as Chama Medina, Chacham Ben Tzina Bashol and Chacham Ovadia and Yabia Oima also paskins that you cannot use coffee and tea for Chama Medina in that case, so that will be problematic. So the shaila we're only left with is schnapps. What about using whiskey? So Rabbi say, I'm going to get myself into a little bit of hot water over here, but I don't care. It goes like this. The Mishnah Brura says very simple. Okay, the Mishnah Brura says very simple. That he says that if whiskey, or anything else for that matter, but he says specifically that, is choviv to you, it's very, very dear to you, you like it a lot, then it's mutter even lechatchela to make Kiddush on. Of course, he's talking about Shabbos Day, Avada. Even if there's wine available, if it's considered to be Chama Medina, but he says, Avada, you have to have a revius, and you have to drink a Mole Lugmov, because every Koshel Bacha requires a minimum of a revius and a Mole Lugmov. That's the Maisa that what the Mishnah Brura says over there. The only shaila is, number one, is at Chama Medina, and number two, can we get away with less than a revius of when we make Kiddush on whiskey, on schnapps, on Shabbos morning? So we have let's go like this. We have a tshuvas in the Marsham. Marsham is God Lador Marsham. Rabbi Zil Orbach once told me that when it came to his Shver Rav Eliashiv, he mentioned the Marsham, he chapped the pacha, the Marsham. So the Marsham, if you look this up yourself, it's in Chelik out of the Simon Kuf Ayin Hey. He brings down that many Gedolim would make Kiddush on whiskey in a small glass. in a glass much smaller that would hold much less than a revius. He brings from the Heilige Rubshitzer, from the Kaminka. He brings also from the Sanza and the Belza, that they all did the same thing, that they made Kiddush on a small glazelach, small little cup that held much less than a revius. And what's the pshat? Koshel Bracha requires a revius, it requires an amount. The answer is, Rabbi, so remember this, because people are going to ask you. There's a Taz in Simukuf Tzadi. The Taz says that when it comes to a Bracha Achroina, Einoch Hanami, that requires a minimum share. Aber zog the Taz, there's certain times that a small amount of something has the chashivas of much more. Those of you that are familiar with Yeridea know that in Yeridea Simon Kuf, everyone knows there's a halacha called a beria. What's a beria? A beria is a small little item like one seed of a pomegranate. There's a shaila if you have to make a bracha achroina on that. What do you mean? It's tiny. It's much less than a gazayis. The answer is a beria has a chashivas. It's chashivas b'fnei atzmoi. Zug the Taz, a drink that people drink in small quantities, and I repeat, Rabbi Say, in small quantities. So mimela, it's going to come out that the chashivas of this drink is dafka in a small amount. Mimela, according to that, Zug the Marsham, that's where the Gedolim held that number one, you got a Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Heilige Balatanya, that it's called Chama Medina because people drink it and it's choshev. They don't drink it sometimes because of its chashivah, so it's got a din of Chama Medina. And number two, we have the Taz that even a small amount will be good enough. Why? Because the chashivas of this is a small amount, and they're soimer on that in that case, and because of that, they take and make Kiddush. So if that's the meaning of what do you do, I asked once Rabbi Zul Orbach, I was waiting for the response. Rabbi Zul Orbach, it was like a gewaldige Yid, a Moshe Gadol. He grew up by Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, that was his father. He grew up in the house of Rabbi Yashiv, and asked him, Rebbe, can we make Kiddush on schnapps? Can we make Kiddush on whiskey? So he thinks for a minute and he says, anybody that wears a gartel or a spodek can make Kiddush on Kiddush Hasai. Rabbi Say, there we go. Have a wonderful day. We'll continue tomorrow.